There we go.
Thank you.
You bet. Enjoy, gentlemen.
All right, so Mr. Black and I are here talking about Afghanistan, and we've written 2 accompanying articles with this that you can see on the scroll right by this video. So let's get started. Obviously, the first question...
Let's shake hands first.
Obviously, the first question, which was, one of the main premises of the article is, like the songs, should we stay or should we go?
Mm-hmm.
And should we be pulling all the troops out of Afghanistan, or should we be staying, or should we be staying and adding even more troops, which is what the president has done. So,
well, I'll make it simple. I think we should go, and the reason I feel that way is that I don't think we have a clear mission in Afghanistan. I hear the Secretary of Defense talk about winning in Afghanistan. I've heard a lot about winning in Afghanistan. I have no clue what that means. I'm not sure that they know either. So I don't think we have a clear mission there. I don't think we know what it means to win. And I think at this point we ought to get out. I do not think, I guess this is the central point, I don't think that our nation is in imminent danger because of what's going on in Afghanistan. So we should get out.
I think it's I would argue about the imminent danger point, because this is a threat that the underestimation of this threat of Al Qaeda is what caused 9/11. And if you're gonna, one of my biggest problems with critics of the war who say this isn't an imminent danger, we have much bigger threats, is tell that to the 3,000 people that died on 9/11. This is the most potent threat that the country has faced, since the fall of the Soviet Union, and in 91. And when the Soviet Union fell, I think intelligence agencies and America itself kind of became arrogant because there was nothing to challenge them. And I don't picture this as a Vietnam scenario. I picture this as us trying to stifle a serious threat, in a country where one of the worst attacks on our nation was planned. So I think absolutely we should be staying, but not blindly, not an open-ended war. I think we need to add more troops. Obama added 30,000. McChrystal recommended 40. But then again, NATO is sending 7 additional thousand, so that's about 37,000 of the 40,000 that McChrystal recommended. So I think if it's done right, then we should absolutely be staying. But of course, there's the problem. If this is done poorly, if it's executed poorly like Bush did with both wars, Afghanistan and Iraq, then you're right, it would be a disaster. So.
See, just to follow up on that, I think that even though my tendency is toward pacifism, I think we were warranted to attack after 9/11 because we were attacked from Afghanistan by Al Qaeda. At this point, Al Qaeda does not have a significant presence in Afghanistan. They're not using it as a training ground for incidents of terrorism against American interests. I think Osama bin Laden is hiding somewhere in a cave like an animal, probably in Pakistan. He's not running as some kind of kingpin or some kind of international coordinated effort of terrorism. And what probably concerns me the most is comparing the threat from Afghanistan to the Cold War. I think that there was a sense, obviously, because of the nuclear arsenals that the United States and the Soviet Union had at their disposal, that the world really was in jeopardy. But today, with what Al Qaeda did on 9/11, that doesn't constitute a global threat to the existence of the human race. And then the final point would be that I think it's a mistake to look at our opponent here, Al Qaeda, as comparable to some kind of scenario, which is the Cold War, the Soviet Union. I don't think we're talking about a clash of civilizations. I think that makes it global in a way that it really isn't.
Well, I think I would argue against a couple points in that statement. Chief among them, saying that this, the nuclear threat in the Cold War is obviously, was a much bigger threat to global security than this threat. Well, that's one of the things we're worried about, though. Because you're right, Al-Qaeda isn't in Afghanistan. There are only about 100 Al-Qaeda militants left there. That's the most recent estimate. But that's the problem is they're not in Afghanistan because they're flooding in and destabilizing Pakistan. And, Pakistan is probably single-handedly the most dangerous country in the world right now because they have a nuclear arsenal. Mm-hmm. They have weapons of mass destruction. While George Bush, capriciously went after these non-existent WMD in Iraq, these terrorists move closer and closer to these very real, very destructive WMD in Pakistan. So I think there is a valid threat. And, Pakistan broaches another point. It's that, Pakistan is part of this war. So when you talk about the Afghanistan war, it really should be called the AfPak war. So even though they're not in Afghanistan,
did you coin that?
No. That was coined a while. Back in March 27th, I think, when Obama announced his first strategy, it was his AfPak strategy. But the second or third thing is that the reason we're there is no longer to destroy Al-Qaeda, because to destroy Al-Qaeda we need Pakistani cooperation. But the reason we're there is to prevent Al-Qaeda from having that sanctuary. And by building that infrastructure, no matter what Obama calls it, it is nation building. But by building that infrastructure and by building up those security forces, and I say in the article, Afghanistan is like a chess game. Afghanistan is our king, and we have to castle our king and put the pieces around it to protect it from the enemy. These pieces are the Afghan security and police forces that we're training every day to try and stifle Taliban insurgency in the Helmand and Kandahar provinces. And because, there's a famous quote from an Afghan Security Council member who says, if U.S. troops left, the Taliban would control Afghanistan within 5 hours. And it's because the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, once we leave, will flood in to this country. And when that happens, and it's inevitable that it's going to happen, if Afghanistan is ready to stand on their 2 feet and fight them, we no longer have a mission